The lecture hall was full of noise. Alien students of many shapes and colors filled the wide room, wings folding, tails flicking, antennae twitching. They were young, curious, and excited. Today was not a normal lesson. Today they were going to learn about something whispered with both fear and fascination. Deathworlds. Professor Calvek adjusted his translator band and cleared his throat. The chatter died down. Every pair of eyes turned toward the tall figure at the front. His long fingers tapped a control pad, and a hologram shimmered into the air above the class. The image showed a planet covered in storms. Lightning struck oceans that boiled with violent waves. Dark forests spread across the land full of hidden eyes that glowed like fire. Class, the professor said slowly. Today we speak of monsters. Gasps ran through the room. Monsters. The word carried weight. Some students leaned forward with excitement. Others pulled their robes tighter around themselves. Not just any monsters, Calvek continued. We study the predators of Deathworlds. Planets so dangerous that most civilizations forbid travel there. Worlds where every breath of air is a gamble, where even the trees are hunters. The hollow shifted. A massive beast appeared, 6 legs, jaws like a steel trap, armor-plated skin. Its roar made a few students cover their ears. This, the professor explained, is a Yorgath, a creature that can bite through ship hulls. Entire military squads have failed to kill one. The class whispered nervously. One student muttered, "Why would anyone live near such things?" "Because life," the professor answered, "finds a way. Even on the most violent of worlds," he waved his hand again. Another hollow appeared, a flying predator with wings that blotted out the sun, its scream shaking the room's speakers. A reptilian student hissed in fear. A soft-skinned avian folded her feathers tight, her beak clicking in alarm. Professor Calvek smiled thinly. He enjoyed this part, the shock, the awe, the disbelief. Deathworld, as he said, create monsters in every form. Acid-blooded insects, lightning-charged reptiles, beasts that do not die even when their heads are cut off. We catalog them, we study them, but we do not fight them, because fighting them means death. The students nodded, eyes wide. The danger felt real, even inside the safe walls of the academy. But one student did not join in their fear. At the back of the hall, almost hidden in shadow, sat a human. He was quiet, his face expressionless. Dark eyes followed the hollows, but there was no surprise in them. No fear. He had seen worse than these projections. Much worse, the others hardly noticed him. To them, he was just another exchange student from a strange world. His body was soft-looking, no claws, no fangs, no armored hide. He looked weaker than everyone else in the room. But inside his chest, his heart beat steady. Not because he was calm, but because he was remembering nights when the sound outside his shelter was real claws on stone, remembering hunts where he was prey and predator both, remembering pain, cold, and blood. The professor spoke again. And now we come to the most feared of all, a death world not only filled with storms, volcanoes, and predators, but also intelligent life. A hush fell over the hall. This, Calvek said, pressing the control pad, is Earth. The hollow changed. Students saw oceans that swallowed entire coasts, mountains that spat fire, forests filled with snakes, cats, and apes. The sheer variety of dangers made them lean back in disbelief. The professor's voice lowered. Earth is not a safe world. It kills every day. Yet one species thrives there. Whispers filled the hall. A species? Living there. Impossible. Yes, Calvek said. His eyes glowed with fascination. Humans, all eyes turned to the hollow. Images of early humans appeared. Small, thin, holding stone tools against towering beasts. Then came later images. Humans hunting with fire, building villages near swamps, climbing mountains, sailing stormy seas. The students laughed nervously. But they look so weak, one scoffed. They have no claws, another added. No armor, said a third. No natural weapons at all. Calvek shook his head. And yet they endure. They adapt. They survive storms, earthquakes, predators, poisons. They do not die easily. They learn, they endure, they fight. The class went silent. The idea was too strange. At the back, the human's mouth twitched in something that was not a smile. He wanted to tell them the truth, that the hollow showed only fragments, that real Deathworld monsters were far worse. That Earth itself was the greatest predator, shaping its children into something no alien could understand. But he said nothing. Not yet. The lesson continued, the professor's voice echoing off the walls. He believed he was teaching them. He believed they were safe. None of them realized the most dangerous creature in the room was not in the hollows. It was sitting among them. Quiet. Watching. Waiting. The hollow flickered again, shifting from earth storms to a new image. A frozen wasteland appeared. Winds howled across endless plains of ice. Shapes moved beneath the snow. Shapes far too large to be natural. Professor Calvic's voice was calm, but his words carried weight. This world is classified as Jarkor. Its air freezes flesh in seconds. Its ground cracks open without warning. And yet, he pointed with one long finger as the hollow zoomed in. Monsters live there. A creature rose from the snow, enormous, its body covered in white fur, its mouth opened, revealing teeth longer than a student's arm. It survives where ships fail. Its blood runs hot enough to melt ice. The people who first discovered it sent armies to capture one. None returned. The room buzzed with whispers. The reptilian student from earlier trembled and muttered, "How can anything fight such a beast?" The professor smiled. "It cannot be fought. It can only be avoided." The hollow shifted again. Now came a jungle world, steaming with heat. The screen showed plants glowing with strange colors, vines moving like snakes. "Zilora," Calvic announced. "A place where even the trees are predators. Touch the wrong leaf and it will drink your blood. Step on the wrong root and it will wrap around your legs until you cannot breathe." And here, the hollow zoomed into a flower. At first it seemed harmless, pink and delicate. Then its petals snapped shut like jaws, crushing a small animal inside. A shriek filled the lecture hall as an avian student covered her beak in horror. That was a plant." "Yes," Calvic said, his eyes glinting. "On Zilora, plants hunt as well as animals." Some students laughed nervously, trying to push away their fear. Others sat stiff, their eyes wide. But again, at the back, the human student did not react. He remembered jungles of his own. Real jungles where insects carried disease, where rivers hid predators with teeth like knives. He remembered nights in forests where every sound could mean danger. His classmates looked at hollow projections. He had lived in them. The professor pressed the pad once more. A dark desert appeared, the sky filled with two suns. The land cracked open with heat. "This," Calvic said, "is Solnar. It looks empty, but do not be fooled. Here live the burrowers. They wait beneath the sand for years. Then when prey steps above, they strike." The hollow showed the ground exploding upward. A massive worm-like creature shot out, swallowing a full-grown animal in one bite before diving back underground. The class jumped. One alien dropped his datapad in shock. Calvic's voice was soft, almost proud. "On worlds like these, survival itself is victory. Most species cannot live there. They perish in days, yet there are exceptions." The hollow returned to Earth. Oceans raged, volcanoes erupted, lightning split the skies, and this, the professor whispered, is the greatest exception. The class leaned forward. Their eyes glowed with disbelief, fear, and curiosity. "Earth," Calvic continued, "is more violent than Jarkor's ice, more treacherous than Zilora's jungle, more unpredictable than Solnar's deserts. And yet one species not only survives, it dominates." The hollow shifted, showing humans in different ages. Ancient hunters chasing mammoths across snowfields. Villagers fighting off predators with spears. Explorers sailing stormy seas in fragile wooden ships. Soldiers marching through deserts with nothing but discipline and will. The professor spoke with growing intensity. "Humans are not strong. They are not armored. They are not born with claws, venom, or wings. And still they endure." Students exchanged uneasy glances. Some shook their heads, unwilling to believe. "This is why they are feared," Calvic said. "Because they adapt. Fire, tools, weapons, medicine, humans invent what they lack. And when nature tries to kill them, they find ways to kill it back." The hollow showed humans building cities on cliffs, far above stormy seas. It showed farmers planting crops in deserts, forcing life to grow where it should not. It showed astronauts walking on the barren surface of a moon, far beyond their homeworld. Gasps filled the room. "But they are fragile," one student protested. "They bleed so easily," another cried. "How can such a species claim victory against Deathworlds themselves?" The professor let their questions hang in the air. His eyes swept the room, his expression solemn. "Because," he said finally, "their will is stronger than fear. Their endurance is greater than pain. When a human falls, another rises. When the world breaks them, they rebuild. That is their strength. The room fell silent. The human student in the back lowered his gaze. He wanted to laugh, but it would have sounded wrong. The professor spoke as if this was theory, as if humans were only remarkable because of statistics and survival records. But the truth was simpler and darker. Humans endured because they had no choice. He remembered faces of people who had fought storms, hunger, predators, and wars. Some had lived, some had not. Survival was not glory. It was simply what humans did. What they always did. The professor, unaware of the human's thoughts, tapped the pad one last time. The hollow faded, leaving only the quiet hum of the projectors. Tomorrow, he said, we continue our study. But for now, remember this. Deathworlds create monsters. Yet sometimes the most dangerous monster of all looks ordinary. Students whispered nervously as they packed their things. The words echoed in their heads, heavy with meaning. At the back, the human stood slowly. His eyes swept across the room, meeting no one's gaze. He walked out without a word, but in his silence there was weight. None of them realized the professor's warning had already come true. The most dangerous monster in the building had just left the classroom. The lecture ended, but the air in the hall was still heavy. The hollows had vanished, yet the images remained in every student's mind. Monsters from frozen wastes, plants that hunted like animals, deserts that swallowed life whole. And above all Earth, groups of students clustered together, whispering as they gathered their things. Their voices echoed off the high walls. That cannot be true, one hissed, a tall reptilian with scales shining green. Humans do not look like Deathworlders. They're soft. Their skin tears from the smallest cut. An avian student folded her wings tight. Yes. I have seen one fall from a chair and bruise like rotten fruit. She tapped her beak against the desk. A Deathworld species? Impossible. A third, small and insect-like, rubbed his antennae together in nervous energy. But the professor showed the records. The storms, the predators, the oceans of fire. How could they survive such things without strength? The reptilian smirked, showing sharp teeth. Stories. That is all. Old myths to make the weak sound strong. Laughter rippled through the group. At the back, the human student paused as he packed his data pad. He heard every word. His expression stayed calm, but his hands tightened slightly on the strap of his bag. Another alien leaned forward, his eyes glowing. Do you think humans tell these stories about themselves? Perhaps they lie, yes. Maybe they spread fear so others do not challenge them. The avian clapped her wings. Yes. That makes sense. If you are weak, you must trick others into thinking you are strong. The reptilian laughed again, his tail flicking across the floor. So humans are not Deathworlders at all. They are tricksters. The human student stood quietly listening. He could have spoken. He could have told them of nights when storms tore cities apart, of jungles that swallowed explorers, of oceans that dragged entire ships beneath the waves. He could have told them about war, about what humans did not only to monsters but to each other, but he stayed silent. Explaining would change nothing. They did not want truth. They wanted comfort. At the front of the hall, Professor Kalvik packed away his holopad, unaware of the whispers. His lesson had been meant to warn, to educate. But to the students it had become a game, a debate about whether humans were truly dangerous or simply a tale to frighten children. The human stepped into the corridor. His footsteps echoed on the polished floor. Behind him voices rose again. Imagine it, one said, laughing. A human fighting a Jorgath? The beast would crush them in seconds. Yes, another agreed. Even our smallest predators could tear them apart. Then why do they sit in our schools? Someone else asked. Why invite them here if they are monsters? That question silenced the group for a moment. Then the reptilian shrugged. Because they are not monsters. They are curiosities, pets of the academy, nothing more. Their laughter returned, sharper this time, aimed like claws. The human walked further down the corridor, but their voices followed. He kept his face still, but inside old memories stirred. He remembered the smell of smoke, the sound of screams, the heavy silence after battles. He remembered creatures with teeth, claws, venom, and he remembered defeating them. Not alone, never alone, but always together with others like him. That was what aliens never understood. Humans did not survive because they were the strongest. They survived because they never stopped. At the end of the hall, he paused by a wide window. Outside, the academy grounds stretched under the pale light of two suns. Alien trees waved their tendrils in the wind. A group of students walked across the courtyard, laughing, free of fear. They had never lived on a world that tried to kill them every day. They could not imagine it. The human's reflection looked back at him in the glass. Plain face, no fangs, no claws, no armor, just flesh and bone. And yet inside that reflection was something none of his classmates could see, a will forged by fire. Back in the lecture hall, the discussion grew heated. The avian argued that humans must have powerful technology to survive. The insect insisted that no tool could protect against storms and beasts forever. The reptilian dismissed them both, declaring that humans were exaggerations, nothing more. Professor Calvek believes too much in old data. The reptilian sneered. He wants to frighten us with stories. But I say humans are weak. The insect leaned closer. Then why, friend, do you lower your voice when one walks past? The reptilian froze. His tail twitched. He had not realized until now that the human had already left. He glanced toward the empty chair at the back. For a brief moment, doubt flickered in his eyes. He remembered the way the human had walked out. Quiet, steady, without fear. The avian laughed to cover her nerves. See, he did not even answer us. If he were dangerous, he would defend himself. The reptilian forced a smile, but the insect's words stayed in his mind. In the corridor, the human adjusted the strap of his bag and began walking again. His pace was calm, but his thoughts were sharp. They thought he was weak. They thought humans lied. They thought monsters only lived in hollows. They had no idea. Not yet. The academy bell rang and the lecture was over. Students spilled into the wide corridors, chattering in excitement and disbelief. The professor's lesson had stirred arguments that buzzed through the halls like static. Humans are Deathworlders, one alien declared loudly. Lies, they cannot be, another shot back. They are soft, weak. My people could crush one with a hand. The voices rose, echoing against the high walls. The human walked quietly among them, his gaze forward, his steps steady. He did not answer their taunts. He did not argue. To him, words were nothing. Survival was never proven by debate. It was proven when the world tried to kill you and you refused to die. He reached the central atrium just as the academy lights flickered. The ceiling lamps dimmed, then brightened again. A low hum trembled through the floor. The students paused, looking around. Then came the sound. A shrill, piercing alarm that made every being in the atrium freeze. Warning, containment breach. Secure all exits. Warning. Containment breach. The words echoed from the speakers in every language. Panic spread instantly. Students screamed, dropped their data pads, shoved each other toward the doors. Professor Calvek stumbled into the atrium, his eyes wide. Remain calm.
Stay together!
He shouted, but no one listened. Fear was stronger than discipline. A loud crash shook the walls. Somewhere down the corridor, metal tore apart like paper. The sound of something heavy moving followed. A slow, dragging scrape. Then a roar so deep it rattled the glass windows. The students froze, their tails stiff, their wings half open, their antennae quivering. The smell of fear filled the air. The professor's face drained of color. No, it cannot be. What is it? The insect student cried, his voice trembling. Calvek swallowed hard. The labs! They were holding a specimen. An alpha predator from the outer systems. His words cracked. It must have escaped. The panic became chaos. Students rushed toward every door at once, colliding, shouting, pushing. One fell, another stepped on him in blind terror. Through the noise, one voice cut sharp and calm. Stop running. The words were simple, quiet, yet they carried. Students turned. The human stood near the center of the atrium, his eyes fixed on the corridor where the sounds had come from. Another crash. The doors at the far end bent inward. A claw punched through the metal, leaving deep scars. The professor shook his head, his voice desperate. Everyone get back! The door burst open. The creature that stepped through silenced the room. It was massive, taller than any student, its body covered in bone spikes. Its eyes glowed red, its mouth dripping with saliva that hissed when it touched the floor. With each step, the ground trembled. A scream tore through the air. Students scrambled back, pressing against the walls. The predator roared, a sound so powerful it made lights flicker again. The professor collapsed to his knees. We are finished, he whispered. There is nothing we can do. But the human did not move back. He stepped forward. The alien student stared at him in disbelief. "What are you doing?" the avian cried. "You will die," the reptilian shouted. The human's eyes narrowed, calm and sharp. "Stay behind me." The predator turned its gaze toward him. It sniffed the air, then growled. Its muscles tensed. The air felt heavy, charged with death. Most beings would have frozen. Most would have begged for mercy. The human only rolled his shoulders and flexed his hands. His breathing slowed. His heart did not race, it steadied, because this moment was not new. He had faced predators before. He had faced storms, jungles, wars. He had bled and broken and survived. This was simply another test. The beast lunged. Students screamed again. The professor covered his face. The predator's jaws opened wide, rows of teeth flashing, and the human moved. Not backward, not away, forward. He ducked under the first strike, rolled across the floor, and grabbed a broken piece of railing. His hands tightened around it like it was a weapon forged for him alone. The alien students watched in frozen silence. Their minds screamed that no prey could stand against a predator like this. But their eyes told them something different. The human was not prey. He rose, eyes blazing, facing the monster head-on. The fight had only just begun. The predator filled the atrium like a living shadow. Its spiked body scraped the walls, sparks flying as bone struck steel. Its eyes glowed a furious red, and each breath came out in a hiss that steamed on the cold floor. Students clung to the edges of the room, their bodies trembling. No one moved. No one even breathed, except the human. He stepped forward, broken railing clutched in his hands like a spear. The metal was bent, jagged at the end, but it would do. The predator lowered its head and growled. The sound rumbled through the floor, through every chest in the room. The air itself seemed to vibrate, and then it lunged. The beast's claws slashed downward, tearing through stone tiles like paper. Shards flew into the air. A student screamed as debris grazed his wing. The predator snapped its jaws, aiming for the human's chest, but the human was already moving. He dived to the side, rolled across the floor, and rose to his feet in one fluid motion. The railing spear came up, and he drove it into the monster's flank. The metal pierced flesh. The predator roared in fury, twisting violently. The force ripped the weapon free, sending the human stumbling backward. Blood sprayed across the floor, thick, dark, and steaming. The smell was sharp, burning the throats of every student. The professor gaped in disbelief. He struck it? The reptilian student's eyes widened. But that is impossible. The predator turned, its gaze locking on the human. Its lips curled back, revealing another row of jagged teeth. It charged again, faster this time. Its claws gouged trenches into the floor. The human did not run. He sprinted forward. The two collided with a crash that shook the atrium. The predator snapped its jaws, but the human ducked under, sliding along the floor. As he passed beneath the monster's belly, he stabbed upward with all his strength. The railing tore into softer flesh beneath the armored plates. The predator shrieked in pain. Its tail lashed out, smashing into the human's side. The blow hurled him across the floor. He hit the wall hard, the air leaving his lungs in a gasp. Gasps filled the hall. The avian student covered her beak. "He is finished. He cannot stand after that." But the human did stand. Slowly, shakily, blood on his lips, but his eyes burned brighter than ever. He lifted the broken weapon again. The predator snarled, enraged that prey still rose to fight. It stomped forward, cracking the floor beneath its weight. The human spat blood, then smiled faintly. "Come on," he whispered. The monster charged once more. This time the human waited. At the last second, he dove aside and swung the railing across the creature's face. Metal struck eye. The predator screamed, clawing at its head as dark fluid poured down its cheek. The atrium shook with the sound. The students pressed tighter against the walls, their disbelief growing into awe. "He fights like a soldier," the insect whispered. "But he is only one. How can one do this?" The human circled, never letting the predator rest. He darted in, striking, then retreating before the claws could catch him. Each blow was small, but each left a mark. The predator was bigger, stronger, faster, but the human refused to break. The professor, still on his knees, whispered to himself, "Adaptability. Endurance. Will." His own lecture echoed back to him. He was watching the very truth he had tried to teach. The predator, furious now, slammed its tail into a support column. Stone cracked and part of the ceiling collapsed. Dust filled the air, blinding the students. Out of the haze came a roar, and then another sound, sharp and human, a battle cry. The dust cleared enough to show the human climbing onto the beast's back. He drove the jagged railing deep between its armored plates, pushing with every ounce of strength left in his body. The predator thrashed wildly, crashing into walls, trying to throw him off, but he held on, teeth clenched, arms locked around the weapon. The railing sank deeper. The monster shrieked again, its movements slowing. It staggered, claws raking the floor, eyes rolling in fury and pain. With one final roar, it collapsed, shaking the entire atrium as it hit the ground. Silence followed. The human slid off its back, landing heavily on his knees. He coughed, blood dripping from his lip, his hands shaking, but he pushed himself upright, standing over the fallen beast. Every eye in the room was on him. The reptilian student whispered, That should not be possible." The avian's wings trembled. He fought it, and he won. Even the professor stared, unable to speak. The human dropped the broken railing onto the floor. The sound echoed like thunder in the silent hall. He looked around at the stunned faces, his expression cold, unreadable. "Stay behind me," he said again, voice calm. "And you live." The students shivered. For the first time, they understood. This was not prey. This was not weak. This was a Deathworlder. The atrium smelled of blood and smoke. Dust still hung in the air, drifting down in lazy swirls, glowing faintly in the broken lights. The predator's massive body lay twisted across the floor, its chest rising and falling once, then going still. Silence wrapped around the room, deep and heavy. The students stood frozen. Their antennae, wings, scales, and tails quivered with shock. No one dared to speak. No one dared even to move, all eyes fixed on the figure standing beside the fallen beast, the human. His clothes were torn, his hands dripping with blood, some his own, some the monster's. Bruises darkened his skin, and a deep cut ran across his shoulder. Yet he stood tall, chest rising and falling with steady breath, eyes burning with something far older than fear. The reptilian student swallowed hard. His voice cracked when he whispered, "He killed it." The avian shook her head, her feathers puffed wide in disbelief. No, that thing was unstoppable. Entire squads, soldiers, could not defeat such a creature. And yet, the insect said softly, his antennae trembling, "He stands." And it does not. Professor Calvek rose slowly to his feet. His long fingers clutched the edge of a desk for support. His eyes, usually sharp with pride, were wide with something else now, recognition. He looked at the human as though seeing him for the first time. Deathworlder," he breathed. His voice cracked with awe. The word spread through the students like a shockwave. Deathworlder. The word they had laughed at only hours before. The word they had dismissed as legend. Now it stood before them, clothed in flesh and blood, undeniable. The human's gaze swept across the room. He said nothing. He did not need to. His silence spoke louder than any words could. One student stumbled forward, trembling. "But how? You are soft. You bleed so easily. You should not—" The human's eyes snapped to him. The student froze, words dying in his throat. There was no malice in the human's stare, but there was something colder. Certainty. A certainty born of battles, of storms, of hunger, of pain. The avian clutched her wings around herself, whispering over and over, "Not possible. Not possible. Not possible." But it was possible. It was standing in front of them. The reptilian stepped back, tail dragging on the floor. He had mocked humans, called them weak, soft, harmless. Now his scales itched with shame. His claws twitched nervously. For the first time he felt small. The insect bowed his head. "Professor?" His voice shook. "You told us humans survived through endurance. Through will." "I did not believe, but now—" "I see." Professor Calvek's throat tightened. He remembered his lecture, the words he had spoken so confidently. Adaptability. Endurance. Will. He had thought they were lessons in theory, safe for discussion. He had not realized they were truth carved into flesh, truth standing in his classroom. He took a step forward. "Human," he said quietly, "you should not have survived this. And yet you did. Why?" For the first time since the fight ended, the human spoke. His voice was low, steady, unshaken. "Because that's what we do." The words echoed, simple and final. The professor's lips parted, But no answer came. What could he say? What could any of them say? The human bent down and pulled the jagged railing free from the predator's carcass. He wiped the blood on his torn shirt and dropped it again. The clang of metal on stone rang through the silence, sharp as a bell. He straightened, his body tired but unbowed. His eyes scanned the group once more, then turned toward the exit. As he walked, the students stepped aside, pressing themselves against the walls to let him pass. None dared to meet his eyes. None dared to speak. The professor lowered his head. He felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. His lesson had been about monsters. He had wanted to show his students the dangers of the universe. But today the universe had sent a different lesson. The monsters were real, but the most dangerous of all was walking out of his classroom. The doors opened with a hiss, and the human stepped into the corridor. His figure faded into shadow, leaving only silence behind. For a long moment no one moved. Then the reptilian whispered, "We mocked him." His voice cracked. "We called him weak. A trickster. A liar." The avian shuddered, her wings folding tight around her body. "We thought he was prey." The insect's antennae drooped. "But prey does not kill predators." Professor Calvek finally spoke, his voice heavy with awe. "Remember this day. Remember what you saw. A human does not need claws. He does not need armor. He is weapon enough. And if ever you doubt it..." His eyes flicked to the blood on the floor. "Look at the body of the beast that lies before you." The students lowered their heads. None laughed. None argued. The truth was burned into their memory forever. The predator's corpse still smoked where it lay, its blood seeping into the cracks of the stone floor. The atrium was silent, filled only with the faint hum of broken lights and the shallow breaths of students who had seen too much. The doors hissed shut behind the human. For a moment it felt as if the entire academy exhaled. The monster was dead, the danger gone, and yet no one felt safe. Not anymore. Professor Calvek stood in the stillness, staring at the body, then at the blood-stained path the human had walked. His lesson on Deathworld monsters had ended, but a greater lesson had begun. The reptilian broke the silence first. His voice was hoarse, trembling. "We mocked him. We said he was weak." He shook his head, scales shivering. "But I saw it. He fought like no one I have ever seen. He fought as if pain was nothing." The avian pressed her feathers tight against her chest. "He should have run." Anyone else would have run. But he went forward, into the jaws of death. Her beak clicked, nervous and unsteady. "Who does that?" The insect answered quietly. "A human." The word hung in the air. Simple, final. Professor Calvek walked closer to the predator's corpse. He studied the wounds, slashes, strikes, the jagged hole where the railing had pierced deep. Each wound told a story, not of brute force, not of overwhelming strength, but of will, of someone who refused to stop, even when the world itself demanded surrender. He turned back to his students. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide. "Do you understand now?" His voice carried weight, heavy as stone. "This is what I tried to teach you. Deathworlds do not just shape monsters. They shape survivors, and humans are the greatest of them all." No one argued this time. No laughter, no mockery, only silence, heavy with realization. The reptilian lowered his gaze. "We are warriors," he muttered. "My people fight with claws and teeth. Yet I would not face what he faced today. I would not survive." The avian shivered. "If he is what humans are, then they are more dangerous than any predator." Professor Calvek nodded. "Not because they are stronger, not because they are faster, but because they refuse to fall. Pain does not stop them. Fear does not bind them. They fight until there is nothing left to fight with, and even then they find more." He looked toward the sealed doors where the human had vanished. "That is why they must never be underestimated." The students stood in silence, each lost in thought. For the first time, the insect broke his usual timidness. "Professor, if one human can do this, what could many do? An army?" His antennae quivered. What could stop them? Calvek's answer was quiet. "Pray you never have to find out." In the corridor beyond, the human walked alone. His steps were steady, though each one ached. His ribs burned with pain where the predator's tail had struck, and blood still trickled from his shoulder. But his eyes were calm, sharp. Behind him, the memory of screams and disbelief echoed in silence. Ahead of him, the academy stretched on, bright and untouched by what had happened in the atrium. Students passed by unaware of the battle that had just taken place. He did not look back. He did not need to. The lesson had been delivered. For them, survival was a theory. For him, it was life. Back in the atrium, the professor gave his final words of the day. His voice was low, but every student heard him clearly. "Remember this," he said. "Not all monsters have claws. Not all predators roar. Sometimes the most dangerous creature of all looks ordinary, human, harmless, until the moment you stand in their way." The reptilian swallowed, his scales paling. The avian shivered, folding her wings. The insect bowed his head. None would forget. Calvek turned back to the dead beast, its lifeless eyes staring upward. The image was burned into his mind, but so was another, the human, bloodied and broken, yet standing victorious. That was the true monster. Not the one that lay on the floor, but the one that had walked away. The human stepped out into the sunlight of the courtyard. Students turned to look at him, whispers spreading like wildfire. Some looked in awe, some in fear, but none with laughter anymore. He met no one's gaze. He walked straight ahead, silent as always. But his presence alone was enough to part the crowd. As he passed, one brave voice called out behind him. "What are you?" He stopped for only a moment. His head turned slightly, his profile sharp in the twin sun's glow. His answer was simple: human. Then he walked on, leaving silence in his wake. From that day, the Academy never taught Deathworld monsters the same way again. Students no longer laughed at the idea of humans. They whispered instead, their voices filled with awe and fear, and none of them ever forgot the lesson burned into their minds. Humans were not prey. Humans were not weak. Humans were the monsters that monsters feared.